You are listening to the People Centric podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do. Hello, people-centric leaders. That's what we say, right? That's what we say. Okay.
Yep, you got
This
it.
is Bethany Taft. I normally don't lead us off here, and so this is me showing all my cards to you listeners. So we're so happy you're here today, and you get to hang out with me, Bethany Taft, and Stephanie Anderson and Diana Royalty. It's the three of us today. And we are going to be talking about hiring externally or basically from within, and when do you do that, and what's the difference, and what are the pros and cons of those things? Is one of those better than the other? We're going to talk about all of those things. This was something that somebody sent to us, an idea that somebody sent to us, and just asked us about it and wanted to get our input on this topic. And so here we are. We thought this would be a great one to talk about. We have lots of thoughts on it. Is that true? I'm seeing head nodding. Diana, what do
Yeah,
you think? Do you feel like this is a good topic to start with for
I do.
today?
I think there's a lot of mystery around why companies do what they do and the hiring practices behind it. And you guys, the secret is they probably don't think about it that much. And they've been doing something that they've always done, right? And
That's
so
right.
I think it's important for us to kind of talk through how those decisions are kind of made and then which ones are good and which ones are not so good and what practices are best. And yeah, we probably talked about this topic for a good 10 minutes before we hit record, so we obviously have a lot of thoughts around it.
Yeah. Yep. That's great. I think that I'm excited to hear more of your thoughts, Diana. I think we teased this out a little bit before we started recording, and I think it'll be really good. Stephanie Anderson, welcome to the podcast.
Well, hi there.
Yeah. Do you have lots of thoughts on this? Do you
Oh
think we
yeah,
should hire from within or externally, or what do you think?
yes, I have lots of thoughts. And I think the great answer to this is like it kind of depends,
Yeah.
right? Which we'll suss out a little more with you guys. But I agree. I think it's keeping focused on actually finding the right person for the role. And I think more companies need to be open to saying, hey, maybe that person is inside our company, and we need to think about what it looks like to develop our team and encourage people on our team toward positions that we see them being a good fit for. Or maybe sometimes we just have to be honest and say, maybe we don't have that person on our team right now. And so if it means finding the best candidate, we're going to look externally. And how do we make sure we find somebody then that's a good fit for our team?
Yeah. Yeah. So not to just give it all away, but we do this a lot on the podcast. I feel like we just tell you just right in the intro. This is where we land on this topic. But really, yeah, I mean, I love what you said. It's finding the right person is where we land on this subject. It's really not one or the other. So maybe what we could start with is let's just talk about the pros and cons of each of those things. So I think what we're saying is neither of these are right or wrong. There are different times you might want to hire from within and why that's really great. And there are other times where it makes more sense to go outside of your organization and look for somebody and do a whole search and all of that. So let's start with the internal hiring. Why would we do that? What's the benefit of hiring internally?
Well, I think there's a lot of benefits for employers and employees when you hire internally. I think one of the main ones is you kind of already know what you're going to get, right? There's no big surprise. There's no weird, like, oh, I didn't realize you couldn't get to work every day, right? They're a known commodity. You know what you're going to get. And for the employees, people love it when they can get more opportunity and build themselves up and grow and develop. And I think a lot of people want to be able to stay in the organization and grow and develop. So I think those are the two big ones for that. But Stephanie, what else do you have?
Yeah, I would add just like institutional knowledge, and like sometimes the learning curve is a lot smaller depending on what you do for work and what your industry is. I know some of you probably work in industries where there's a lot of standards between organizations. So if you move from one company to the next, you don't have a big learning curve. But for some of you, your organization has a fairly big learning curve of things you need to understand just about the company and why they operate the way that they do, or how to use or sell specific products or services. And so I think that's the other benefit of hiring somebody from within is essentially you're just like, you get to carry institutional knowledge they already have forward. And sometimes, not that you don't still do onboarding, because you still should for their new position, but sometimes again, that learning curve feels far less steep moving someone from one position to another.
Yeah, it feels like that if you're already working for them, they can hit the ground running a little faster, right? Like you want your newly promoted person or your new position to really be able to be effective at that job. And if they're kind of already there and know a lot of the stuff, they kind of hit that upswing a lot quicker. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all really good. Those are all really good points. And I think about too, even just like it creates kind of a sense of loyalty. I can't think of the right word, but it creates kind of a sense of loyalty with your employees too. Whenever you see, oh, there are opportunities for me to grow into this organization and develop my skills, and they're willing to invest in me in that way. And all of those things. And I think that that speaks a lot to just the culture that you are able to develop there, if you have that. And I think when employees see that there are those opportunities, then they want to stick around longer, which, kind of to your point before, is like it saves the company money in the long run if you have lower turnover. And so if you can keep developing people and hiring within, I think that's a really cool option.
Yeah, yeah. I think that shows that really you're making an investment in the team, and even sometimes in the location. Like I can think of a client we've worked with who is really committed to just hiring people in their town, and it's a part of their organizational identity that they are in this place. And so they are developing leaders within their community, and that's really important to them. So I think, yeah, to echo everything you said, Bethany, I think it shows an investment in the team, investment in the company, that you want people who are on the team to be the next leaders of your organization someday. And again, not to say that you wouldn't ever hire outside, but that you're thinking about that and you're trying to be conscious of the fact that you want to invest in your team or in your hometown, and doing some of those things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so one thing that we were talking about before we started recording was just the idea of like there's some organizations that create policies specifically for well, we hire internally first, or that's our preferred way to hire. And so they'll post it internally for a few weeks before they would ever post it externally. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that. If you guys wanted to share, who wants to share their thoughts on this kind of a policy? Is it good? Is it bad?
I'll go. I don't love this policy, and here's why. Not that I'm about to poo-poo it entirely, but I just think it creates a lot of unnecessary work and confusion when you split it between like you said, Bethany, well, first it posts internally for 3 weeks and then it posts externally. And it wouldn't be until after the end of both of those periods that we would ever consider a candidate or do some of that. I just think it creates a lot of like wasted time and then confusion for the team, because it's like, well, are you then evaluating internal candidates actually as they come in? Or are you waiting to do that evaluation until after you've seen all the external? Like, I just have never heard an employee say that and be like, oh, yeah, that gave me so much clarity on how they're going to determine who's the right fit for this. So I would say, like, I think it's my preference would just be the job is just posted, and you do the internal and the external at the same time. And if you would like to hire an internal candidate, just be sure that your team knows that, right? And you can do that at the same time that you open it up, and be very transparent about how the interview process is going to flow. Like, is there a cutoff date and you're not going to accept any candidates after that, and you're going to get through, who's come in. So I think just if you can do it that way, for me at least, it eliminates a lot of confusion, and then makes it clear, like, hey, if we hire, then we are hiring the best candidate, whether that's somebody internally or externally. And I will tell you, like, I've been in a position like that before, where I was an internal candidate and I knew there were also external candidates. And like, it felt pretty good at the end of the day to know, like, okay, like the organization really did vet and I am the best person for this.
Yeah, that's really good. Diana, did you have anything to add?
No, I was going to say that was perfect. I
Yeah.
I do think that at the end of the day, it is about getting the best candidate. And if that's not someone internal, that's okay, right? We're not saying like every time you have to hire someone internal, but you should be clear with your staff and with your people that you are absolutely looking for that best candidate.
Yeah, that is good. I like that. Yeah. So something you said is like you have to be really clear with your people. And I think that was one of the points we talked about with all of this too, is that, if you do want to hire from within, that's awesome and wonderful. But you have to be really intentional about that too. So if that's your goal, if that's your plan, that it's like we want to be an organization that promotes from within, or that hires within first before we would go, look for somebody externally, then you have to make sure you have the right conversations, right? So we were talking a little bit about, if you are posting a job internally and you have some people in mind for it, but you've never had that conversation with them, and then you go through that whole process, and you've heard this lots of different times. They go through a whole process and they're like, gosh, why didn't we get anybody internally like apply for this, and we have all these people in mind for it. Or we've even had, like, we had people who applied for it that, like, we really weren't thinking would apply for it. We didn't know that they would apply for this, so that was sort of surprising, and we're not sure if they're great for a fit for this job. I mean, what's the best way to set that up so that they can successfully hire internally in the future? I mean, what kind of conversations have to happen to make that successful?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of good conversations and check-ins with the people that you know want to grow, right? Some people don't want to grow, some people want to stay where they are, so that's okay. But I think you have to provide learning opportunities for those people and know where you think you want them to go and where you think you want them to grow, and know their skill set and where they need to improve, and give them opportunities to do that. And then intentionally also be clear that you think they're ready for new opportunities and new growth, and that you would like them to do that at this organization. I think too many bosses and leaders don't want to promise a promotion, right? They don't want to put it in their heads that someone's going to get promoted or someone's going to get a job, but then they're not saying anything, right? So I think you have to be clear with your employees of like, no, I do want you on the bench for this. I want you to grow into this. I hope that you're here a really long time. I want to give you more opportunities. What kind of opportunities do you want? Where do you see yourself growing into? And have open and honest conversations about it. You're not promising anything. And I think employees know that, but it's good for them to hear that you're thinking of them for different roles.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie, did you have anything on that?
No, I mean, I would just echo Diana a lot there of like, if you're getting ready to post a job and you think about someone internally that you're like, ooh, I hope that they would be interested in this. Don't just hope, go talk to them, right? And what Diana said of like, there's a good way you can have this conversation. And I think you can even tell them like, hey, like, I can't make any promises here, but like, I see great things in you. You fit our culture so well. I'd love for you to consider throwing your hat in the ring, and we'll see where it goes. And as long as you're willing to kind of ride along in the journey on this, like, we'd love to have you throw your hat in the ring and figure out where it is. I think another thing that came to mind while we were talking about this, so I'm changing a little bit from what you just asked me, was I think you also have to be open to an internal candidate surprising you a little bit, right? Because I'm with you, Bethany, of like, I think a lot of times we hear from employers and they're like, ooh, all the people who applied internally are not who we would want for this position. But sometimes you might have someone surprise you. And I think be open to that and be sure you give every internal candidate a good review, at least, or a good shot at an interview. I don't think you have to give every internal candidate a good interview, because that's another something we'll hear sometimes. Like, everyone who's internal is guaranteed an interview. I don't think you need to do that. I don't think it's helpful for everyone. But I think if there's somebody who you get get it from them, get the application or however you process it, and you're like, oh, wow, I wouldn't have thought of them for this, then like get curious and talk to them. Like, tell me why you applied this for this position. What do you see, your strengths that could apply for this? Because I know we've had even someone we work with recently that was surprised by an internal candidate, and it ended up being an amazing fit. And then it was so exciting and happy. And the whole team got to celebrate, that this person's growing with the organization and doing cool new things. So I'd say just, if it's not somebody who you thought would apply, don't just write it off immediately based on the job they currently have. Like, look at the application they put together, ask them some questions, and be open to who that could be on the team. But then like we've been saying, on the other end of that spectrum, if you have people in mind, tell them that even if they're not interested, it's such an amazing thing to hear and a wonderful compliment, even if they decide not to go for it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's good. Yeah, it's the be curious recommendation, right? Of like, ask why they're interested and what drew them to this, and maybe why, I think it's even okay to say, hey, I'm a little bit surprised you applied. I didn't think you would apply for something like this, and here's why, but tell me more about like what made you think this would be a really good opportunity for yourself, and you might learn something new about this person that you didn't know, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and then even for the people who you're thinking, gosh, I don't know, why didn't they apply? They were the people that I really wanted to apply for this position. Also, just don't, yeah, like you guys said, don't assume you know why they didn't, or that it's because they didn't apply, they actually weren't interested. It could be like what you guys said, maybe they haven't thought of themselves in that way for that position, or maybe there's other things going on in their world they're just like, I think this would be really great, but here's what's going on in my life right now that it's maybe not the right timing for me. But maybe if this was in the future, which also is helpful for you in the future with recruiting conversations, to say, oh, we do have somebody internally who would like this kind of role in the future. It's just not the right time. It's not yet. Or maybe they don't like how the position is actually set up internally, which leads you to other questions, right? About like, oh, maybe we need to change something about this role or the structure or whatever is happening in this department that we need to maybe adjust and think about to be able to get the candidates that we need to, not only internally, but externally too. So I think there's a lot of fruit that could come from having those conversations with people that you already have on your team. One note too, with the like promoting from within culture, which we've all said, like, that's beautiful. Promoting from within is an awesome culture to create. But I would say like a warning downfall of that is if we aren't going after what you guys said before of like making sure everybody in the organization knows that our goal is to hire the right person. Promoting from within is our first goal, but at the end of the day, we want to get the right person in. If we falter to the, hey, we want to promote from within, and that's our main goal, then anytime you go out of the organization or feel like you have to go out of the organization to hire, it feels like a betrayal to your current employees, which you just have to be prepared for. And so I think there are ways just to be mindful of like, how do you set that up for the company at large so that everybody really understands what the goal is at the end of the day. It's not just because we want to promote from within, but it's because we want to get the right person, which you guys talked about. Let's move to the other side of things too. So hiring externally, when would we do that? Why would we do that?
I think there's a lot, well, there's a lot of reasons, but I think one, you want the right candidate, right? And sometimes the right candidate is not inside. But I also think there's a good benefit in that hiring someone from the outside won't they don't know that candidate doesn't know how you've always done it. That candidate has fresh eyes on the things that you're doing. That candidate has different experiences and can bring those to innovate for your company. That candidate sort of has like new blood, that sort of like reviving, innovative thing that comes with bringing in someone who's different from you. And I think that that's kind of a cool benefit when you look for people outside and bring someone in from the outside.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it almost allows you to have a reset moment sometimes. Like if you have, you're hiring from this position and maybe that's a department or team that's kind of been underperforming. Like sometimes maybe bringing in somebody from the outside to be the new manager versus promoting on the team could be a good moment of like expectations reset that sometimes is easier to do when there's already that change happening versus trying to do it internally. It helps kind of clear the air sometimes because sometimes what we'll hear from clients is like, well, there's political stuff surrounding that in our organization. It's political around that person or this person. Well, if it's super messy and it would make more mess or more or complicate it more to promote that person, then maybe we look for somebody on the outside who people haven't assigned intent to, or is not going to be on one side or the other coming into it and can kind of help clear the air, help the team move forward on something. Because I think, we're not stating the obvious here, which is like, skills, like there can be skills. And Diana, you said experience that somebody brings to it. It could be a great reason why you hire outside because maybe we just need somebody at a higher skill level than what we've got. But I think there's lots of other reasons why you would too. And the other thing I'll say is like, yeah, right candidate is so important and don't get blinded by convenience. And sometimes we'll see this too, is like
I like
our
that.
clients will start hiring and they're looking externally and then they're maybe not getting great candidates. And they're like, well, we could just move so-and-so into that position because they know how to do the job and everybody likes them fine. And that's why I'd say getting blinded by convenience. Like sometimes taking the easy choice is not the right choice. And you really need to make sure it's the right candidate and you believe that person can be successful in the role, not just like they're here and they're willing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a really good point. And we've seen that a lot, right? Where people just fall into that of like, it's just easier. I don't know. This isn't like our top pick, but we'll kind of settle for this. And really, if the other person knew that that's what was happening, like they really wouldn't want to be the one who settled for, right?
No, it would
Um,
make you feel terrible if you knew that, right? So
right.
just don't do that to people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think some of it too is, sometimes it's just a flaw in your current system, honestly, of like you might have to hire externally, but you alluded to that a little bit too, but um you might have to hire externally if you just didn't do a good job of training people and developing people. And you're kind of looking, it's been far down the road. And we see this a lot with like succession planning with like the top level of the organization, I would say, is maybe we're like, oh, we're getting a lot of people close to retirement, or I as the CEO am like, I would kind of like to retire in a few years, but I don't know who it's going to be. And I honestly haven't spent time like training up somebody or mentoring somebody or developing somebody internally. And so they're lacking these really big skill sets, or they just haven't led the way that I need them to lead. And we don't have time. Our first conversation, working with clients would be like, hey, let's talk to those people and let's help get them developed and work on those things that they need to work on so that maybe they could be the next person to take your role. But if we don't have time, then we can say, okay, that was on us. We didn't do that well. We should have done that. We should do that better in the future. Right now, we got to get somebody hired up for this position. And so let's look for the right person externally. So I think that's another time that we would that we would do that. Any other thoughts on hiring externally, pros or cons?
I mean, I think it all goes back to, again, who's the right candidate, right? So again, internally or externally, it doesn't matter as long as they're the right candidate. Yeah. We're gonna say that many times in this podcast.
Yeah,
It's going to
that's
become like our
perfect.
bachelor phrase, for the right reasons. If you're someone who's
For the
ever
right reasons.
watched The Bachelor or any of the franchise.
Listen, I feel
The
like
right person.
you're on a bachelor kick right now, Stephanie.
Okay, I have
You've heard our
this is
other
probably
pod.
my second mention this week, but it's just because something funny happened with it earlier, and I won't go on my soapbox about the
Okay,
Bachelor franchise here,
we can talk
but
about it later.
I
We can
find
talk
it
about it
really
later.
funny. And so if
It
you like the
is.
jokes too, then you liked my last joke. If not, then you're probably silently judging me for ever watching the Bachelor franchise. And that's fine. I can live with
I'm
it.
not judging you. I'm just pointing out that you brought it up a few times this
Okay.
week.
I'll tone it down. I'll tone it down.
It's okay. I just, you know. All right. Well, I think there's a lot of good directions we've taken this already today. And so if you have more thoughts, everybody who's listening, if you're thinking about this and you are like, gosh, I really wish you would have dug more into this, or gosh, we've hired from within before and it didn't go really well. Tell us more about that. We'd love to talk about that and dig deep into maybe some specific situations as well, or externally too. I think, you know, and I think from the work that we do, we've seen both go really well and go really poorly. And I think there are ways that we could talk through of how each of those could have gone better. So if you have more, if you'd like more information or want to talk through some more situations or want us to cover that, please let us know. Yeah. Okay. Any final words from the team?
No, no.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I do have one. I do have one
Okay.
final. You are an employee and you want that job. You want the next job.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Don't wait on it, right? Like to make
Yeah,
sure you're clear that with your boss that you want it. And don't expect them to come to you and be like, I think you're great for this. If you want it, go after it. That's
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, good final. That was a good final note. I do agree. I think it's one of those things of they're not mind readers. Do we encourage them to come talk to you? Heard us, we did. So yes, we do encourage them to do that. But if they don't, don't take it personally. Go tell them, hey, I'm really interested in this position. And then again, it opens up this great conversation to say, hey, that's great. I was hoping I was hoping you would apply, or, oh, wow, I didn't know you were interested in that, or I didn't see you for that. And here's some things some developmental opportunities I see for you to be able to be ready for this kind of position. Either way, it helps kind of level you up. So take that step. I think that's a really good note, Diana. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time today. Thanks for listening to us. We really enjoy doing this podcast for you all. So have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.